Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into a book that, well, it's really shifted how millions think about money for, gosh, over 2 decades now. Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you know the one. It famously sets up this really powerful contrast. On one side, you have the conventional financial ideas from his biological poor dad, highly educated but, struggling financially. And on the other, the unconventional sort of entrepreneurial wisdom from his rich dad, a wealthy business owner, actually his best friend's father.
Exactly. And our mission today really is to explore how this book can reshape your whole perspective on money. I mean, the definitions of assets, liabilities, and fundamentally just the concept of creating wealth itself. It's less about, say, what specific stock to buy and much, much more about how to fundamentally change your financial thinking. And what's really amazing is how relevant those core ideas still feel, even after all this time.
Right. So when you talk about Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you almost had to start with those big shifts in thinking it introduces. For you, what was the concept that really kind of rearranged things when you first read it?
Oh, for so many people, myself included, it's gotta be that incredibly stark but almost deceptively simple distinction he makes between assets and liabilities. Kiyosaki's definition is straightforward. An asset puts money in your pocket, a liability takes money out. Sounds obvious, maybe.
But it's not, is it?
No, the implications are actually pretty profound.
That's exactly where it gets so interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because that idea immediately makes you challenge so much common wisdom. I mean, think about a house. For most people, it's their biggest asset, the foundation of their wealth. But Kiyosaki comes along and says, well, hang on. If that house is mainly generating expenses, your mortgage, property taxes, upkeeping, it's actually working like a liability. It's taking money out of your pocket. That really makes you rethink what ownership even means, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It just completely flips the script on what society often tells us is an asset. And flowing right from that is the idea of mind your own business, which isn't just like start a company necessarily. It's about intentionally building up what he calls your asset column. So that could be real estate bringing in rent or stocks paying dividends or, yes, maybe a business you own. The key shift is moving away from only working for a paycheck to actively creating income streams that aren't directly tied to you clocking in and out.
Which leads us straight into that super vivid metaphor he uses, the rat race. He paints this picture right. Working, earning, paying bills, getting more bills, needing more money, working harder just to stay afloat. It's like a hamster wheel.
Yeah.
What makes that metaphor stick so well, do you think? And how does he say we actually, get off it?
Well, it resonates because, frankly, a lot of people feel trapped in that exact cycle. Lots of motion, but not much real forward progress financially. And Kiyosaki's escape route, like you said, is getting those income-generating assets, things that produce passive income. That's what lets you step off the treadmill, or at least gives you the choice, right, whether you want to run on it or not. And to do that, he really hammers home the absolute importance of financial education. He argues pretty strongly that traditional schooling, while vital for lots of things, often trains people to be good employees. It doesn't really teach them much about investing or how money actually works or taxes or how to create value on their own.
And he pushes hard on the mindset piece, too. Rich Dad, in the stories, keeps telling him that getting over the fear of losing money is just, well, part of learning how to invest.
Yeah.
It's not about never failing, but seeing failure as feedback, a chance to learn and get better. How vital is that mindset shift to actually doing the asset building stuff?
Oh, it's completely foundational. Without shifting that mindset, the fear of risk can just paralyze you, stop you from taking any action at all. So ultimately, this whole first part of the book, the core message is make money work for you. Stop just working for money perpetually. It's a total paradigm shift from the usual advice many of us got growing up, which was often about job security and, just saving pennies, not really about actively creating wealth.
Okay, so as inspiring as those ideas can be, and they really can be revolutionary for some people, Rich Dad, Poor Dad also gets a lot of pushback. There are significant controversies. It's definitely stirred up debate over the years. What's probably the most common critique you hear about the book?
I'd say the biggest one, especially from maybe more traditional financial advisors or investors, is how little concrete, actionable how-to advice there is. Kiyosaki tells you, go buy assets. But he offers very little on, well, how do you find them? How do you evaluate if they're actually good assets? How do you manage the risk involved? Especially if you're starting out with, not much capital. It feels more philosophical than like a step-by-step guide.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. It's like he points in a direction but doesn't really give you the map, right? And then, of course, there's that long-running question about Rich Dad himself. Kiyosaki's always been pretty vague about who this guy actually was, which leads people to wonder, was he a composite character? Maybe even, made up. Why do you think that specific point attracts so much attention?
Well, it comes down to authenticity, doesn't it? I mean, even if the stories are just meant to illustrate the points, and the principles could still be valuable even if dramatized, that vagueness, it kind of feeds into the criticism that it feels a bit like a get-rich-quick scheme sometimes. Even though he talks about learning and education, the way the story unfolds can sometimes make it seem like financial freedom is just a couple of clever deals away. And let's be honest, for most people navigating the real world of finance, it's usually not that simple.
That's a really important point. And speaking of the real world, critics also bring up Kiyosaki's own business history. His company, Rich Global LLC, actually filed for bankruptcy back in 2012. For a lot of people, that raises a pretty basic question. Does this advice actually work in practice, or is it more theory than reality when things get tough?
Indeed. And, questions have also come up about some of his later business ventures. Some have faced accusations of being essentially multi-level marketing schemes, which, fairly or unfairly, doesn't exactly bolster his credibility with some critics. And this leads to another serious concern: the risk of misinterpretation. That work for yourself message is empowering, sure, but it could also, maybe unintentionally, push people into taking big risks on unproven ideas without doing their homework. The book is definitely not a replacement for solid financial planning or getting professional advice.
Right. And beyond his own track record, are there other criticisms about the actual content of the book, the ideas themselves?
Oh, absolutely. Critics often argue it oversimplifies really complex financial stuff. It kind of glosses over important factors like your socioeconomic background or how easy it is for you to get capital or just the wider economic climate. All things that massively impact financial success. And Kiyosaki's somewhat dismissive tone towards formal education, that's also drawn a lot of fire from academics and traditional finance folks. They argue it undermines the value of structured learning.
Okay, but despite all these valid criticisms, all the controversy, you just can't deny the book's huge ongoing impact. It's still a bestseller, decades later. So why do you think Rich Dad, Poor Dad still connects so strongly with so many people, even now? What's the secret to its lasting appeal?
I think fundamentally it taps into this deep-seated desire most people have for financial independence. And it's a topic that, frankly, traditional education systems tend to ignore. Schools are mostly set up to train people to be good employees, right? To find a stable job, earn a steady income. Kiyosaki comes along and offers a completely different story, an alternative narrative that feels, well, empowering. It feels achievable to many, even if, like we've discussed, the how-to part is a bit thin. It speaks to that often unspoken yearning to just break free from the standard path.
So it's like it gives people permission to question the status quo, to not just blindly follow that conventional route. Get the job, save a bit, cross your fingers, and hope for the best. Would you say that permission giving, part encouraging financial literacy outside the usual channels, is maybe its greatest strength?
That's a great way to put it, yeah. It definitely pushes readers to think critically about the financial advice they get and to actually seek out knowledge for themselves. And, its relevance today is just undeniable, especially with the way the economy's changed. We live in this age of side hustles. The gig economy is huge. Online investing is more accessible than ever. In that context, Kiyosaki's core message, create diverse income streams, actively build that asset column, it feels more necessary, more applicable now than maybe it even did back then. It almost feels like he saw where things were heading, in a way.
So we've taken quite a journey here. From understanding those really transformative ideas about money and Rich Dad, Poor Dad to looking closely at the controversies and the criticisms. And finally, sort of grasping why it still has such a powerful, lasting influence on how people think about their finances.
Yeah, and we really hope you listening take some time to reflect on both sides, the core message Kiyosaki offers, and also the valid critiques that have been raised against his work over the years. So, considering everything we've talked about today, all the different perspectives in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, here's something to think about. What piece of conventional financial wisdom are you now perhaps inspired to reevaluate for your own financial journey?